What you are about to hear may sound impossible, unbelievable even, the kind of thing you'd expect to find in a movie or a myth, not in a quiet rural community tucked into the heart of Manchester, Jamaica. A hurricane blows through. The winds tear branches from trees, the rain lashes at rooftops, and the familiar chaos of a tropical storm spreads across the land. And then the storm passes. The winds die. The clouds drift away. Sunlight returns like a blessing poured over a battered landscape. For 2 days, maybe 3, life seems to be returning to normal. People sweep mud from their yards, wring out soaked clothing, check for leaks in their roofs. They thank God that they made it through another hurricane with their homes and families intact. But then something happens, something so strange, so surreal, and so deeply unsettling that entire communities are left speechless. Days after the storm has left, days after the last drop of rain has fallen, the ground itself begins to flood. Not from rivers, not from drainage gullies, not from rain falling from the sky, but from water pushing upward through the soil as if the very earth is exhaling. Water rising from below. This is the story of what happened in content. Manchester, a story that reveals a terrifying secret scientists have been warning about for decades. A secret buried deep beneath the limestone foundation of Jamaica. When Hurricane Melissa moved on, most people in content expected the usual post-storm routine. Clear the roads, cut fallen limbs, scrape away the inches of mud that cling to everything after heavy rain. Maybe patch a roof if necessary, maybe check on elderly neighbors to make sure they had what they needed. But no one, not a single resident, expected to wake up to a sight that seemed to defy nature itself. Their yards slowly transforming into a lake. Imagine stepping outside on a bright, calm morning only to find water pooling at your ankles. Not rushing water, not muddy runoff, still water. Rising bit by bit, inch by inch, as though someone beneath the surface were filling the land from below. You call your neighbors. They walk outside, look around, and see the same thing happening in their yards too. Confusion spreads. Worry follows. By midday, trucks arrive with industrial pumps, the kind used to drain construction sites, the kind designed to move thousands of gallons of water in a matter of hours. The hoses snake across the growing pool. The pumps roar to life and pull water upward with enormous force. Hours pass. The engines grow hot. The operators watch the hoses tremble with pressure. And then, when the pumps are finally turned off, everyone gathers around the water's edge expecting to see at least some improvement. But the water level hasn't dropped. Not an inch, not a centimeter. It is as though the pumps did absolutely nothing. The water is still there, unmoved, unbothered by human effort. That is the moment when fear begins to take root. Because this is not surface flooding. This is something far more unsettling. Something that suggests the earth itself is releasing water from an endless, unseen source. To understand why, we must go beneath the surface literally. Manchester sits on a massive bed of limestone, one of the most absorbent, porous, easily carved rock types on the planet. Limestone landscapes behave like sponges riddled with tunnels, cavities, cracks, and ancient channels carved by water over thousands of years. Scientists call this karst topography, and it creates a hidden underground world that stretches for miles in every direction. Beneath the quiet communities of Manchester lies a labyrinth of rivers, caves, chambers, and sinkholes, an underground plumbing system so extensive and so delicate that even small changes in rainfall can trigger dramatic reactions. Normally, this limestone network works as nature intended. Rain falls, sinks into the rock, travels through these winding channels, and eventually flows toward lower ground or into deep aquifers. For generations, Manchester's aquifers have provided water to towns like Manville, supplying clean, fresh groundwater pulled from one of the most efficient natural systems on Earth. But this same system becomes extremely dangerous when overwhelmed. And that is exactly what happened when Hurricane Melissa drenched the island. The rainfall was relentless. The limestone took in what it could. The underground channels carried the water as designed, but the storm kept coming hour after hour, day after day. Eventually, every underground cavity filled, every hidden river swelled, every crack, crevice, and cavern reached its absolute limit. And when the underground system maxes out, the water does not calmly wait. Pressure builds, the water begins to rise, and at that point the earth itself starts to push it upward. Hydrologists monitoring the situation observed something almost unbelievable. Groundwater levels in parts of Manchester rose nearly 100 meters, roughly the height of a 30-story building, within just a few weeks. To scientists, that kind of spike is the equivalent of a time bomb ticking beneath the soil. And unlike surface floods, which surge quickly and drain quickly, rising groundwater moves slowly, steadily, relentlessly. It seeps into homes through cracks people didn't even know existed. It pushes through old sinkholes that have remained dormant for decades. It seeps under verandas, through kitchen floors, beneath foundations. Residents living closest to the affected area described hearing strange sounds at dawn. Bubbling beneath the floorboards, soft gurgling near the walls, the drip and rush of water moving in places water had no business being. For families in the lowest-lying parts of content, the situation became terrifyingly urgent. Some had minutes, not hours, to gather children, pets, documents, and vital belongings before abandoning their homes to the rising water. Entire yards disappeared beneath a smooth, mirror-like surface. No waves, no currents, just depth. Silent, still, patient. And here is the part that chills scientists more than anything. This has happened before multiple times. Residents old enough to remember the early 2000s recall similar events. In 2002, 2003, and 2005, communities such as Newmarket, Porus, New River, and Harmons experienced the same eerie phenomenon. Floods that did not come from the sky, but from within the earth. Sinkholes filled until they resembled deep lakes. Roads vanished overnight. People used makeshift rafts to move from house to house. In some places, the water remained for months before slowly retreating back into the underground world that created it. So the big question now is, why is it happening more often? And are humans partly to blame? Before we dive into that, consider this. Rising groundwater is far more dangerous than surface flooding. When rivers overflow, the water eventually drains back into the channels once rainfall stops. But when groundwater rises, it can linger far longer, weeks, even months, because the water below must slowly find its way back through the clogged, narrow, ancient passages of the limestone. Scientists suspect that the same overloading mechanism triggered by Hurricane Melissa is occurring again, but with one alarming difference. Human development may be making the situation worse. Whenever people build homes on top of natural sinkholes, clear vegetation, pave over land that would normally absorb rainfall, or fill natural depressions, they interfere with the ancient drainage network that the limestone relies on. Limestone landscapes function efficiently only when their natural cracks, holes, and drainage pathways remain open. Block those pathways, and the entire system becomes unstable. Highways, depending on where they are built, can redirect water that was meant to flow into natural basins. Housing developments can seal off channels that once released pressure from below. Around the world, engineers studying karst regions from Florida to Slovenia to parts of China have found that development dramatically increases the frequency of groundwater eruptions. Not because humans cause the water, but because they close off nature's escape routes. In Manchester, that debate is now front and center. Did human alterations magnify the flooding? It is too early for scientists to give definite answers, but history from similar regions suggests the answer may be yes. Meanwhile, on the ground, residents had no time for debates. They acted. Some took shovels and began digging trenches by hand, desperate to guide the rising water toward known sinkholes and natural low points that might relieve the pressure. Footage captured shows water rushing through these trenches with frightening speed. That speed is proof of enormous underground pressure. Without those hand-dug channels, the flood would have spread farther, devastating more homes. But groundwater flooding brings another threat: mosquitoes. Stagnant water is the perfect breeding ground for the insects that spread dengue, chikungunya, and other illnesses. When water remains for weeks, mosquito populations explode. Public health officials treat such events with the utmost seriousness because vector-borne diseases can spread quickly in affected communities. And in moments like this, when families are displaced and living conditions grow difficult, the risk is multiplied. As footage circulated online, scenes of daily life offered a sobering reminder: disaster does not stop life. In one clip, a funeral procession moves slowly through the partially flooded road, cars weaving carefully between water and parked vehicles. Even as the land around them transforms, people continue to mourn, to worship, to work, to cook, to raise children. Life does not pause for disaster. It adapts, reshapes itself, and marches forward. But beneath that persistence lies a deeper truth about what unfolded in content. This is not simply a flood. It is a message from the earth. A reminder that the real story of Manchester is written not on the surface, but in the dark, labyrinthine world below it, a world shaped over millennia, a world few people ever see, a world with rules entirely its own. Manchester is far from unique. Across the globe, regions built on karst terrain experience the same strange, dramatic water behavior. In parts of Mexico, hidden underground rivers swell and burst upward after heavy rainfall. In China's Guangxi province, entire fields transform into seasonal lakes when the aquifers fill. In Slovenia, the ancient Postojna karst system regularly pushes water into villages built centuries later. What happened in content belongs to a global family of geological events, rare, unpredictable, but entirely natural. Karst landscapes store vast amounts of water, but they also release water unpredictably depending on the shape and condition of their hidden networks. When those networks reach full capacity, the ground behaves like an upturned bottle. Pressure builds. Water has nowhere to go but up, and it rises through any crack, fault, or sinkhole ancient enough to remember its original pathways. The problem is that humans rarely know where those pathways lie. A patch of land may look solid and dependable on the surface, but beneath it may be a sinkhole that last opened 80 years ago, or a chamber that only fills during once-in-a-decade storms. Nature remembers roots we forget, and during storms like Melissa, those old pathways are awakened. Engineers struggle with this reality because most infrastructure is designed for surface water: road drains, culverts, gutters, embankments. But Manchester's water problem starts below. You can widen a gully all you want. It will not lower groundwater rising from beneath your home. The problem is invisible, ancient, and incredibly difficult to control. Yet elders across Manchester have long understood the clues. Generations before hydrologists arrived with instruments and topographic maps, people relied on memory. They knew which places flooded from the ground during heavy rains. They knew which fields turned into ponds. They knew which depressions were once sinkholes filled decades ago. Their knowledge aligns precisely with what scientists now confirm. Areas like Porous, New Market, Harmons, New River, and now Content are built along key underground drainage routes, places vulnerable to groundwater resurgence during aquifer overload. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this story is how long the water stays. Surface floods retreat quickly. Groundwater does not. Once every cavity is full, the entire underground system must drain slowly, painfully slowly, through narrow cracks and channels that act like bottlenecks. If even one major channel becomes blocked by collapsed rock, storm debris, or sediment, the drainage slows even more. And so families wait, and watch, and hope. Meanwhile, development continues across Manchester. Every filled sinkhole, every paved depression, every new foundation risks altering the natural balance. Humans do not cause these floods, but we amplify them. We take natural systems designed to handle extreme rainfall and unknowingly restrict them. And when the pressure builds, it is communities like content that suffer. The footage of residents digging trenches by hand is more than a symbol of resilience. It is a reminder that people often become the first line of defense against forces far older and larger than themselves. Those trenches provided relief nature could not offer fast enough. Yet even as the community battled the rising water, another battle grew quiet and unseen: the threat of disease. Mosquitoes thrive in still water, and when that water refuses to drain, the risk becomes severe. Public health teams know that dengue outbreaks often follow events like this. With displaced families, crowded temporary shelters, and stress-weakening immune systems, a mosquito-borne outbreak could turn a geological crisis into a medical one. Through all this, life continued. People stood at the water's edge trying to understand how soil they had trusted all their lives had betrayed them. Parents carried belongings to higher ground. Children watched silently, sensing the worry in the adults' eyes. A funeral procession threaded its way carefully between parked cars and standing water, honoring a life even as nature reminded everyone how fragile life is. And that brings us to the unavoidable truth at the heart of this entire event. Manchester's flooding is not simply a disaster. It is a warning one shaped by ancient geology, amplified by modern development, and triggered by storms that are growing stronger with climate change. It tells us that the ground beneath our feet is alive in ways we rarely acknowledge. That water remembers ancient paths even when we forget them. That nature does not negotiate with human convenience. And that communities built on limestone must learn to live with the hidden world below them or suffer when it awakens. What happened in content is not just a flood. It is a window into the deep, complex, mysterious forces shaping Jamaica's landscape. A reminder that storms do not end when the skies clear. That sometimes, the most dangerous part of a disaster begins only after the rain stops, and that beneath Manchester lies a world capable of swallowing land, reshaping lives, and rewriting what we think we know about the earth beneath us.